What's up, friends? Today we are here with my mountain board and a review for the Apex Air mountain board trucks. Now, this is a little bit of a special one because most of my gear reviews are 100-mile reviews, but this one is a 1,000+ mile review. In fact, around 1,400 to be exact. I don't track 100% of my miles. So hopefully you guys will find this super interesting, and stay tuned until the very end to see all of my thoughts about these awesome trucks. Now, I actually started recording this review a long time ago and ended up not getting to it. So I've got a little bit of footage here of when I was installing these trucks on this mountain board. And the installation is pretty easy. Basically, if you are building your mountain board for the first time, all you have to do is put in the 4 screws and screw them onto your deck. For me, I was actually upgrading from Matrix. Matrix 2 trucks, and the reason for that is because I absolutely bent one to smithereens. Let me show you real quick. Right here is my old rear truck, and it's pretty obvious to see that something is very wrong with it. And this happened over a year ago when I was recording the dirt trick competition, and I bent this doing the highest ollie / bunny hop sort of thing over a stack of cans. I'll put a clip on screen real quick so you can see the time where I bent this. But anyway, I upgraded from this to the Apex Airs, and I'll just be playing some of that footage in the background right now. Had to take the old drivetrain off again. Here's another shout out to a different video. On here right now, I have the newbie drives, which I made an installation video for. Those have been on the board for about, I want to say, 800-ish of the miles that I've done on these trucks. The rest was done with the Board Dynamics gear drives, which I have actually over there in the corner because they're still broken and out of service. That's kind of unrelated, but that's what I'm installing in the clips you see on screen. Anyway, the reason I upgraded was because I bent this Matrix 2 truck. And in all the rest of the miles and tricks and everything that I've done and jumping off of hundreds of curbs, I haven't bent these trucks at all. These things are very durable. And I think if you ever watch some of the footage on Apex's social media from some of their team riders, you'll see that these trucks are incredibly durable, with people doing flips off of jumps and all kinds of stuff like that that I'm definitely not capable of. So those are the main reasons that we upgraded to the Apex Airs, and today we're going to talk about some things I like about them, some things I don't like about them, and why I think they are the best off-road mountain boarding truck. So first off, what exactly are the Apex Air trucks? Well, they are kind of a inspired truck from the no snow parallel kingpin trucks that existed quite a long time ago. I'll try to put a picture on screen if I can find a picture of them. But this is a more practical use case for those. There are some other PKP trucks on the market, and I'll put a picture of the truck up close on screen, or B-roll, so you can see these parallel kingpins. And the reason why we, the community / Apex, came up with that name is because you have 2 kingpins that are the same length in the same axis, and they both mount to the hanger via bushings only. Now, this is different from double kingpin because double kingpin is actually 2 stacked kingpins at different levels and different axes. So quite a bit different. There are other PKP trucks on the market. There are other similar trucks on the market, but the Apex Airs, I think, are one of the best ones at this size and at this price point. Now, Etox was one of the ones that had large PKBs before Apex, but they're not exactly the same application, and they're quite different. So hard to compare them directly. I've not ridden them, I've seen them, but that's about it. Trampa also came out with a pair of parallel kingpin inspired trucks right after Apex did, which was a couple of years ago now, surprisingly. But not really seen a whole bunch of those, and I really love the Apex Air, so these are the ones that I'm going to recommend. Now, the parallel kingpin design has a lot of advantages, and one of those is the number one thing on here about these trucks that I enjoy, and that is their off-road performance. Now, since you have two parallel kingpins with only bushings supporting the hanger, you end up with a lot of shock absorption. And this shock absorption works in mostly the induced shock way. It's not as good as independent suspension where if one wheel hits a rock, it'll go up by itself. But for the Apex Airs, if you hit a rock on one side but the other side is flat, because it's bushings and not a pivot cup, it really gives you a lot more options for where this wheel can travel when you hit that bump. And I'll put some footage on screen now of me riding on some pretty rough off-road, and you can see how the front trucks articulate, or the front truck articulates side to side as I hit those rocks. And what you end up with on the deck is a lot more or a lot less vibrations and impact coming through the deck. Now, for these trucks, you're going to want to put them on a mountain board deck or something with angled tips, because that's how they work. If you put these on a flat deck and try to turn, you won't go anywhere. It's similar to channel trucks in that sense, but if you put the angle on, you'll get their full potential. And for me, I am running these on 35 degrees in the front and 35 degrees in the back. The Bro deck, the Hero Bro, which is my favorite mountain board deck so far, is a 30 degree. So in the front here, I have a 5-degree printed, 3D printed riser, and in the back, I have a 3D printed riser as well. They've held up perfectly fine. I think it's PETG with a couple of walls and like 80% infill, but it has held up perfectly fine. So I'm running 35 degrees front, 35 degrees back, and that has given me a lot of great performance and the ability to turn around most things that I need to, and for the most part, have a stable ride. The other way that the Apex Airs absorb shock is through the bushings directly. Now, if you think about the forces that are being applied to the truck, you have the forces from rocks hitting it side to side and your turning forces. They're all being applied to the bushings, but you also have the fact that the whole deck and the rider are sitting directly on those pair of bushings, and that is why the Airs ship with stock chubby bushings on the board side to give it a little bit more support. At least that's my theory. But those chubby bushings take up a lot of shocks in the vertical direction, and that would be from you jumping off of something like a curb or a table or whatever you're doing. The shock is going directly through the bushings rather than going through a single bushing and a pivot cup, which gives it a little bit less shock absorption in my opinion. And so that's my number one reason is shock absorption. These trucks offer a lot of that, and I think they offer a lot more than a channel truck, which I would think is the direct comparison to these in terms of mountain board trucks. Now, this next one kind of goes hand in hand with shock absorption, and that is ride comfort. Now, shock absorption, I would say, is more of like hitting hard rocks, jumping off of curbs and stuff like that. But in terms of general ride comfort, they're just really nice to ride. And you can, once you learn how to do it, you can carve with these really well, get some nice deep carves, and during those carves, the trucks are doing their best to absorb all the shock in that direction of your carve, and it works super well. So I do ride this mountain board on the street quite a bit compared to off-road. It's honestly probably 80-20 in terms of street and off-road, but they do a really good job for that. And one of the things that they do well is absorb potholes. And you can ride on really terrible streets with these and 8-inch tires, and it really feels like child's play. It's not really a big deal. So ride comfort is another reason why these are still on my board after all of these miles. The next big positive for these trucks is that there's a ton of tunability. Now, when you look at these trucks, you have 4 bushings. You have 2 roadside bushings and 2 board side bushings. The 2 roadside bushings from the manufacturer are by default just cone bushings, and the ones on the board side are chubby I don't know if they're chubby or if they're fat cones. I'll have to double check. But the fact that you have 4 bushings here to tune means that you can do a whole lot of mixing and matching. Now, unfortunately, in this 1,000 miles, I don't have a lot of information to give you on tuning capabilities. There is a whole thread on Eastgate News, which I'll put a link in the description for you to check that out. But you have a lot of options here. And for me, I ended up settling on green barrels on the board side and the white cones on the outside, and the same thing on the back of the board. Now, I do have a Advanced Riders Division team rider that runs Apex Airs, and he has a setup that's capable of doing up to 50 miles an hour with stable performance. My setup, I would say I'm comfortable up to about 35, maybe 37, and then it starts to get a little bit squirrely on me, but for the most part, it's stable up to that speed, and the turning performance is all right. Now, this is one thing that I have wished I could do, but the fact of the matter is, Riptide bushings, which are the best in the industry, are expensive, and it costs a lot to tune up these trucks and figure out what exactly the best configuration is. Now, this is kind of a problem for all PKP trucks, but also something that they share, is that you have a great amount of tunability, but it can take a while to figure out the exact setup that fits your riding style. All right, my final point of positivity with these trucks is that they're extremely durable. Now, I pretty much summed up everything that would make a fairly good truck, and this final part is one of the most important things because these just last. Now, I can't think of any Apex Airs that have been snapped, and there's probably a good reason for that. These are made out of 70-75 aluminum, which is extremely strong and not very brittle. These trucks have 12mm axles that thread into them, and they're just machined and manufactured to a very high quality. Now, when you get these trucks, you will see a pretty much flawless surface finish, really great high quality machined joints and surfaces, and a very accurate spot to mount your drivetrain to. Now, these 12mm axles do mean that you can only use these with 12mm bearings, but the fact of the matter is that these bearings are just a lot stronger than what you have in the smaller wheels. So on top of that, there's also tons of wheel options that support the 28mm outer diameter bearing size of the standard Mountainboard bearing. Now, when we talk about the durability on Mountainboard trucks, there's a couple things to consider. One is axles bending, 2 is hangers bending, and 3 is kingpin durability. Now, I said that I've never seen an Apex Air snap, but I have seen quite a few damaged kingpins. And this is kind of due to the fact that the kingpins are largely unsupported. They're just in their base plate, and then the 2 bolts stick out and mount the hanger to them. So if you have a head-on collision with a curb, say you accidentally full throttled your board into a curb while you weren't standing on it, most likely both of the kingpins will probably bend, because that's probably the least strong direction that these can take load in. So that's one thing to be aware of. It is possible to bend your kingpins on these trucks, and while I know someone who has bent several of them, he is far from a normal rider, and to be honest, it doesn't surprise me too much that he's managed to break those, because he breaks a lot of other things. If you're watching this, you know who you are. But these truck hangers are extremely durable. I don't think I've seen a single one of these broken or a single axle bent. These axles are huge. 12mm is no joke. You compare that to an 8mm axle on a standard skateboard, and you'll be surprised how much of a difference there is. It's like comparing 9-inch tires to 8-inch tires. It's not that much of a difference in numbers, but it looks like a big difference in size. So along with those 12mm axles, you get a very strong hanger, again with that slightly stronger aluminum, and it gives you a really great package that lasts for thousands and thousands of miles without breaking. If anyone has any experience with these trucks bending or breaking, please let me know in the comments, because I would be curious to know how you managed to do that. One other quick note I wanted to make about the durability of these trucks is that the kingpins on mine have been surprisingly durable, sustaining some impacts from rocks on the trail. And I'll show you a little B-roll of the rear truck here. The rear kingpin has gotten scraped a little bit, but one of my initial fears when I got these trucks was that the kingpins were super exposed underneath and that rocks would hit them all the time. That's just not a problem, really. I've probably only hit like 5 or 6 rocks off-roading and maybe 1 curb with these trucks, and you can see even the drives on here are not too beat up. So durability of those kingpins is fairly good, despite the fact that it's possible to bend them. Now, before we go into things I don't like, I just want to say these are my favorite mountain board trucks to date, and the only reason that they're going to be coming off my board is so I can test out another kind of truck. And I'll be having a video on that other kind of truck pretty soon because they're quite interesting. So, in any case, first off, I bought these trucks with my own money. I got them secondhand for, I think, $450 from someone in the United States. If you want to buy these trucks, you can go to the Apex website, and I'll leave a link for that in the description, of course. They probably will have a Black Friday sale, so I would definitely check that out because these are something that you're going to want to pick up if you're building a mountain board in the near future. Now, going into things that are not my favorite in these trucks, I've got only a couple of them, but they are, I wouldn't say they're huge negatives, more slight annoyances or things to be aware of. Now, we're going to go in order of severity per se in terms of things I don't like. And the first thing is the tunability. Now, this sounds absolutely outrageous because why would you want less tunability? But the thing is, it's actually pretty hard to figure out the ideal configuration of these trucks. Now, I will say up front, I didn't actually change the bushings on these at all until like 500 miles in when I was attempting to ride this board on the track. First off, these are not really track trucks. Most people aren't racing mountain boards on the track. There are some, but it takes a lot of tuning to get them in a good place for the track, in my opinion. The stock configuration will get you pretty far. You honestly don't really need to change it, but once you do change it, it's pretty hard to figure out exactly what you need to do. And ideally, you'll find a friend that has a lot of bushings and just mess around with it. That's pretty much the easiest way. If you have a preferred Apex Air bushing configuration, please leave it down in the comments because I'm sure people will be interested to hear what your thoughts are. I know some of my friends have some good setups. I haven't ridden them yet, but I may do in the near future. So tunability is one thing that can be a bit tough. Next up is high-speed stability. Now, this is an arguable fact, but for me, these trucks are not my favorite above 35 miles an hour. There's a number of reasons, but I think the number one thing is that they just don't seem as stable as something like the 3-link truck. Now, there are other trucks that can go high speed, including channels. I really don't have very much time on channel trucks like this one, but from what I've heard, you can get really good high-speed stability from channel trucks. And I know you can get high-speed stability out of these because I have a friend that's gone almost 50 on them, but it does take a little bit of work. So I think in the future, if there's another version of these, maybe there's a way to make them a little bit more stable out of the box without having to mess with the bushings a ton. I'm not sure what that way would be, but for me, what I've experienced is that once I get to that 35 miles an hour, it could be a combination of the deck and these trucks and my wheels and tires, whatever. I do find that they tend to bounce a little bit more than I would like, especially when you hit an object. It doesn't quite bounce out as fast as I would like. Now, the other thing that these trucks have a little bit of an issue with is any board that doesn't have bindings. These trucks need to have bindings in order for you to get your best turning radius. And I mean, it seems kind of like a silly thing to mention because why wouldn't you have bindings on a mountain board? But some people run them without. And to be honest, these trucks I think are best designed for bindings. And wow, my light turned off. Anyway, I was saying I really think that these trucks are designed for bindings, and that is something to be aware of when you're making a new build. But overall, you can get really good turning radius with these trucks if you use your bindings to your fullest extent and have bushings that are at least close to tuned for your specific rider weight. Now, this is one thing that I think is the most severe issue that I've experienced with these trucks. Some people may notice it, some people may not. I guess it's kind of a twofold thing. One, unbalanced wheels on these trucks do really bad, and specifically unbalanced plastic wheels. I have a pair of Rockstar 2 wheels and 8-inch knobby tires, and they're not really the best balance, and on these trucks it is way worse than when I was riding them on these Matrix 2s. And I don't know why that is exactly, but the imbalance in the wheels seems to cause a lot of fluctuation and oscillation of the truck hanger, and it's super weird. It's definitely more pronounced at different speeds, and that's due to the I guess the wavelength of the vibration that is coming out of those wheels. And so, for example, at about 20 miles an hour I had a really bad wobble, but at 25 miles an hour it was pretty much gone, and that's just because of how vibration mechanics work. But anyway, that's too technical. The main point is unbalanced wheels on these trucks do not do well, but balanced wheels do quite well. These Kendas on these Board Dynamics GT3 rims are pretty much perfect on here, and I've never really had a problem. So if you're gonna run wheels that are plastic, make sure you use some balancing weights and get them as close as possible for running them on these trucks. Now, in combination with that oscillation that I've seen is cornering oscillation. And this one I think is a problem with the design of this truck in general, based on the fact that it's only being supported by bushings. There is a good amount of dampening from them, but not as much absorption. When you have like a spring damper system, they kind of help balance each other out. And for these trucks, when you're cornering hard in a turn and you hit some bumps, they do tend to buck a little bit, and it feels pretty weird. Now, I've experienced this on the track in a couple different circumstances. One was at Eastgate Con 1. I was racing around the track, and there's some sort of bumpy bits where it's a consistent ripple in the track surface, and that really felt weird. It was kind of bucking around on there. And in some other circumstances, I've had the like road bumps and stuff in our tracks affect them in a negative way. And honestly, I'm not exactly sure how to fix that besides maybe switching to a harder, more supportive bushing, but I don't know. It's just kind of a side effect of the technology of these trucks. That doesn't take very much away from them at all in terms of actual usability, and these are still my #1 mountain board truck, but for track use, they have a couple weird quirks like that that I haven't really been able to figure out. If you have an idea of what that could be caused by, let me know in the comments. I'm really interested to hear your guys' feedback on this video and what you think of these trucks in general. So, what exactly happens next? Well, to be honest, these trucks are probably going to end up back on my board, but for now, I'm going to be testing the Newbie RTKP trucks, which are another inspired truck design that uses a pivot cup, but also has dual bushings to help with the shock absorption. They're an extremely wide truck. I think they're even wider than these Apex Airs, but that'll be interesting to try out. But my suspicion is that I'm going to end up with these Airs back on my board and chilling. So, trying to think if there's any other details that are important for you guys to have. One thing I did think of is that the bearings for these wheels, you can acquire them from Apex themselves, from Board Dynamics in the States, or from MBS in the States, or you can get them on Amazon. A lot of these bigger bearings are easier to find high quality sealed ones than the 8mm ones because there's less manufacturers, or maybe not less manufacturers, but I think they're a little bit less common. So if you don't like the prices at any of those vendors, you can probably find them yourself. But these are a 28mm outer diameter, 12mm inner diameter, and they last really long. I've had one pair of bearings in these wheels the whole time I've been riding, and these are pretty much the only wheels that I've ridden on here for a long period of time. I have 9-inchers in Newbie pentagram wheels that have the same kind of bearing, and I also have the Rockstar 2s, but those both have significantly less miles on them. So I still have no issues with these bearings. They roll perfectly, and I think it's just because they're a lot more durable than the tiny balls that are in those 8mm bearings. So overall, I love these things. I will recommend them to anyone that asks what truck they should put on their mountain board. I think they're a really great option right now. They have good drivetrain compatibility, good machining quality, good durability, and they just perform really well off-road. So hopefully you guys found this video useful. I know it's going to be a little bit different than some of the other videos I've done, especially the reviews. There's no scoring in this video, just my opinions and my experiences with these trucks over 1,000 miles. So please let me know if you have any questions down in the comments. Always happy to talk about these. Make sure to check out those links in the description, and stay safe, keep on riding, and peace out.